I'm a logger in northern British Columbia, Canada. I'm an avid hunter and have spent many nights hunting alone. That being said, quite a few years ago, I was working on a broken down skidder in the dark after everyone on the logging block was gone, changing a blown hydraulic hose under the cab when I felt like I was being watched. The feeling continued to get worse and worse, so I was on edge and continued to work on replacing the blown hose. Every trip for tools to the service truck and back, I would scan for eyes in the nearby tree line about 25 metres away with my flashlight. Nothing. I continued to work on the pain in the ass hose that you literally have to dive your head and upper body under the cab to reach, and so your legs are stuck up in the air and feeling vulnerable. The feeling of being watched gets more intense. All the hairs on my neck are standing and I hear a two-tone whistle from far away. Almost as if it was wind. It was far away, but it was flat and calm that day. Also, there was about 6 inches of fresh snow on the ground. I pushed myself out from under the skidder and looked around quietly with a flashlight for eyes in the tree line and down the road. Nothing. I had one side of the hose fitting to remove still, and it was the easier side and higher up, so I wasn't arse over tea kettle removing it. I put my head back under the cab and quickly began to spin the fitting loose. The feeling of being watched was so bad, every hair on my body was standing. And then I hear the same two-tone whistle, very loudly, in the tree line, directly behind me. I had the hose off at the exact same time, so I whipped myself out from under the cab and turned, ready to throw down with a wrench in my hand, yelling, "All right, where the fuck are ya?" No one there. No tracks, no eyes, no wind. Nothing. The flashlight I had was more of a small floodlight for working on repair stuff, so it didn't light up inside the trees. The next day, it had snowed another 6 inches or so, but I went and hiked the tree line with my 12 gauge, and I was ready to go. No tracks that I could see, no perches on the trees where snow had been pushed off, if it was a bird. Nothing. I actually should have mentioned that this was over some 30 kilometres into the middle of nowhere, in the middle of winter, at about 7 p.m. So it was pitch black outside. So this is my second encounter, and this occurred 7 kilometres down the road from my previous. A few years later, I was out hunting with a friend when we lost legal light. So we hiked to the truck and hit the road in his parents' new Ford half-ton. You know, the ones with the sensors all over the vehicle. We had some music playing as we were just heading back towards town again, when the music started acting weird and cutting in and out with static. So, me being in the passenger seat, disconnected the Bluetooth and reconnected the phone. Music cleared up and we continued down the road. We got up to the kilometre board on the road that my previous encounter took place. "Oh hey, that's the whistle block that we logged a couple years back." Half jokingly, because I couldn't make heads or tails of it. My friend replied, "Great, thanks for that," as I had told him the story before. We continued slowly driving down the road because it gets pretty rough in a couple spots and the road has a few sharp turns and an S-bend. We go about a kilometre further and the music starts screeching and doing what we can only describe as alien noises. I disconnect the Bluetooth again and my friend says, "Oh, Mum's got a cord in here." I plug in the phone and play music again. Another kilometre down the road and the phone goes apeshit. I mean, loud alien squealing and sounds similar to that shitty dial-up internet noise from the 90s. We had started into the S-bend when this was happening and we shut the music off completely, making the one half of the S turn, and then we both look up from the music deck screen and the headlight illuminates a figure standing in the middle of the road. So we swerve and take the ditch a bit, still going probably 30 kilometres an hour, and get the truck back up on the road. We continued coasting down the road as we were both in awe after just seeing a flash of this thing. I finally say, after what seemed like 5 quiet minutes, "Man, did you just see?" My friend cuts me off and says, "A fucking skeleton in the middle of the road." I say, "Yeah, like a white rib cage. And a deer skull for a face," he finishes. I said, "Turn around. What the fuck was that? Does someone need our help?" Not thinking that we're in the middle of nowhere, with no vehicles around, or any that we had passed from other hunters. It was early season, and no one bow hunts here anyways. My friend says, "I'm not turning around. I feel sick, like I'm going to throw up." And he continued driving. We didn't see another vehicle until we hit pavement again. It was taller than the pickup by easily a couple of feet. I'm 6'1", and my forehead is at the top of the window for reference. It has black surrounding the white of the bones, with long arms half stretched out to its sides, as if it was saying, "Try and hit me." I watched this thing pass the passenger window and stared up at it as we wailed by it. And it was definitely three-dimensional. Tall, with long arms, and dark, dead-looking. Like light was sucked into it without reflecting anything. It's hard to explain. When we hit service again, my friend received a text message from his mum saying, "What did you two idiots hit in my brand new truck?" I guess the new Fords send near accident reports to the owner when the sensors pick up something. The only thing I can find online that resembles what we both saw is a Wendigo, without the antlers.
This story happened when I was 12 years old. I'm a female and I'm 25 now. The story I'm about to tell you might not be scary to most, but for me and my parents, it was. I remember it was a Saturday night around 9 or 10 p.m. during the summer. I owned one dog at the time, and his name was Benny. My parents decided that night that they felt like going for a walk around the block with Benny and asked me if I wanted to join them. I said no because I wanted to play PWI on my computer. PWI stands for Perfect World International. My parents were okay with leaving me alone since the walk wouldn't take longer than 30 minutes. As my parents got dressed to leave the house, I logged into PWI and looked around in my guild and global chat to see if anybody was on. For some reason, nobody was, so I decided to join my parents. I got dressed, I put Benny on his leash, and we all left. I like to mention that I lived in an apartment building that had 10 floors, and we lived on the very first floor. Anyway, we left the house and my dad closed the door. We had 3 keyholes and a steel bar that would block the door from the inside. The bar covered half of the door. Precautions were my father's obsession. We exited the building and enjoyed our walk, and after 15 minutes we realized the wind had changed from warm summer wind to incoming storm wind. My mother made the call to go back home as Benny already did all of his duties, so we all returned. We opened the building door, climbed the 5 stairs to our door, and attempted to open it. Then my father did the following. He unlocked the first 3 locks and then attempted to unlock the metal bar that holds the door locked. At that moment, my father paused, turned around at us with the most serious face I've ever seen on him, and whispered to us to call the police and ring the neighbor's door. My mom went to the second apartment, and the neighbor, who I'll call Ted, he came out asking my father what happened. My dad whispered to him as he was covering the see-through hole of the door and said, "Someone is in our house. He or they are holding the door. Please stay here with my family and attempt to open it. I will be back." After he said that, I saw my father rush all by himself around the building in the dark. And I say dark because we didn't have a street light on the side of our building. So my dad disappeared into the darkness, and I went outside too, just not following him too much, but only to hear if he was in trouble. As soon as I go out, I heard him shout, "Hey, you, come back! Who the hell do you think you are? I called the police." At the same time I heard him shout, I looked at Ted, who managed to open the door and enter the house. I went after them and entered my house, although it no longer felt like my house. In just 15 minutes while we were walking, the home invaders made a complete mess of it. All our shelves and wardrobes were pulled out, our clothes scattered all over the house, and Benny's dry food was all over the floor, indicating they must have tripped in his bowls, probably not knowing we even owned a dog. But what scared me the most was how organized they were. And I say they because after seeing the disaster that was left behind, we knew it was impossible for just one person to hold the door, steal, and organize what they want to take with them. On the couch, they placed our laptops, one of our TVs, my father's collection of coins, our phones, chargers, wallets, and even my father's camera. He's a photographer, and that week he had to attend a wedding. So they didn't have enough time to steal all of that, so they just settled with some of my mom's jewelry and stopped pocket money. After seeing this, in my silly child mind, I rushed to my room to check my piggy bank. I always saved up money from whatever chores I had to do, and it wasn't much, but it was my work and savings, and at that time, I thought they stole it too. When I entered my room, I saw the metal bars covering my windows were cut open and my window broken. This is how they entered, through my room. My room is the only room facing the side of the building and the most secluded from views. Needless to say, I never felt safe in my own room in which I had to live for the next 10 years of my life until I moved in with my fiance. The police arrived and they started throwing white dust all over our house to find fingerprints. They took pictures, took our statements, and analyzed my room and window. They were unable to catch the home invaders, but were able to tell us that this invasion was not the only one in our neighborhood. During that month, another 4 houses were broken into, and one of them being the home of a different cop. They told us that the invaders analyzed their victims, learned their schedule, and even knew where the children's rooms were, as they seemed to be entering the houses through the kids' windows. And all the families that were affected all had children. They did not expect us to be back that soon and panicked, which is why one of them holding the door with his body so that the others could flee. The person after which my dad was shouting was probably the one holding the door and escaping through my broken window. So, I don't know what could have happened if I didn't change my mind and give up on raiding for gears in PWI. I would probably have come face to face with these invaders. I'm happy I didn't, and I hope to God I never ever meet with them again. This happened to me 2 to 3 years ago. I was around 23 at the time. I'm a female and I live in Romania. One night I was coming home from class late around 11 p.m. I had to take the subway for about 12 stops. The destination I had to get off of was at the end of the line for the subway. At that time, there wouldn't be many people in the subway. I'm a pretty lonely person, so all I need is my headset and my music and I'm good to go. Said and done, I plug in my music. I pick the furthest chair in the subway away from the only 2 people that were taking the subway with me at the time. So far so good, until I see with the corner of my eye a silhouette approaching me and sitting right next to me. It was a man, fairly built, dark hair, wearing glasses, a black shirt, and a black hoodie, and a sickening smile. He doesn't engage in talking with me, but would just stare at my phone as I browse through my music. I can hear him breathe heavily, not painfully, but still like he was feeling something very strong. I feel uneasy, so I decide to change my seat and go even further behind, trying to avoid him. So I pick a new chair, sit down, plug my headset again, and proceed with the remaining 6.5 stops on my way home. I see the silhouette growing bigger and bigger and a breeze running on my skin as I realize the guy is again sitting right next to me. Glancing in mid-air, dead eyes, a big smile, staring right into my phone. I panic. There are still 4 stops to go. I have nowhere to hide. I look after the other person in the subway, trying to sit next to her, thinking that strength comes in numbers. She's no longer sitting there, so I start shaking a bit, but not allowing the creeper to notice me being vulnerable. I stand up, go to the door, and just decide to stand until my stop comes. This way he won't sit next to me, right? Wrong. He comes straight after me, sits on the chair right next to the door, and because he couldn't see my phone from that angle, he fixates me right in my soul with his black, dead eyes and says, "Hey, gorgeous, why are you avoiding me?" I'm freaking out as I look at my phone, trying to call my boyfriend or message him, and he stops me by saying, "I know no one will help you. You would have sent an SOS message by now. I know you didn't." That moment I realized I'm cornered. He has been focusing on my phone to see who I was talking to, trying to figure out if I'll panic, trying to see if I would ask someone for help. He cornered me real bad. I had the luck to reach my stop as I would delay any reaction or ignore him so that he would repeat whatever he wanted to say. I drop off and run for the exit, not looking back. I get out at the service and I don't see him anymore. At this moment, I put my phone in my purse and I realize I had pepper spray with me all along. My heartbeat comes back to normal as I know at least I have something to defend myself with, but still a long way to get home. and who knows if he's alone or not. I walk rather fast for maybe 5 minutes from the metro and feel a hand grabbing my wrist hard and pulling me back. Another hand covering my mouth, disabling me from screaming my lungs out. It was him, the same black hoodie, dark hair, and dead eye stalker. He was furious and said, "Running from me? How dare you run away from me? You should be honored I give you attention." I'm fairly built for a woman, so I guess he thought, well, men didn't find me beautiful or something, and I should feel blessed a creep like him stalks me and tries to hurt me. Now my phone is in my bag, and I can't call the police, and I can't reach for the pepper spray. I panic. I can't punch him in the crotch, I can't scratch him as I don't have long nails, and his hand is still on my mouth. So what do? I did the most desperate and disgusting thing I can think of just to save my life. I played along. I used my other hand to touch the inside of his thigh and mumble and "I'm sorry," while his hand was on my mouth. He took his hand off my mouth and I repeated that I'm sorry. I didn't realize he was just flirting. He let his guard down and took his hand off my wrist. He asked me for my phone number and address, to drop me off, but I refused, saying I'd rather add him on Facebook, and he agreed. I told him I'd reach my phone, but instead grabbed the pepper spray and sprayed all over his face. I made sure I'd cover his eyes, nose, mouth, even his ears and hands. He instantly got all red, suffocating from the pepper spray and swelling. I called the police, told them what happened and what I did. They asked me if he was immobilized, and I said yes, as the effect wears off in 45 minutes. The police arrived there 5 minutes later to see me shaking like a leaf and a man on the ground, swollen like a pumpkin, throwing up and swearing at me with gasps of breath. He was arrested, and the police told me they have been looking for him for the past week as they've discovered the body of a 24-year-old woman in his apartment. Just like me, she was fairly built and had red hair. The woman was his girlfriend, and ever since he killed her, he's never gotten back to the apartment. I do not know what he wanted to do with me, and I can understand why he targeted me due to the similarities, but stranger in the subway stalking women at midnight, trying to befriend them, or even worse, murder them. I hope to God you and I never meet again.